All right, welcome everybody once again to the C&J Speedway Review. Welcome to the 2018 season. What a fantastic weekend of racing we had. My name is Chris Burns. I am from the Loki and Jabroni Show. You can find us every Tuesday night live streaming on Facebook and every Wednesday on iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you steal your favorite podcasts from. On the other side of me is probably the stat guru of all stat gurus. He is the man of the hour, the man with the power, too sweet to be sour, funky like a monkey. His name is Corey Huffnagel. Corey, how are we doing tonight?
Well, I'm doing pretty good, Chris, and all I can just say is the racing season is finally back. I am really excited, and I'd probably say the one thing that I was really excited the most was the engines firing up at the start of the 2018 season, but I'd probably say that this weekend at Daytona didn't really disappoint everyone. And, I thought the racing was great. I thought the drafting was great. There were a couple of big wrecks, but other than that, I'd probably say the Daytona 500 didn't disappoint anyone either.
Absolutely not. We're going to get into some of the talk, some of the controversy, some of the things that people spoke about after the Daytona 500. There was even a little bit of miscommunication in the Xfinity race, which I'm sure you'll cover when we talk about the Xfinity race. But again, every season starts off and you're excited, but easily since 2007, the most exciting weekend of racing that I've seen to start a racing season.
Absolutely.
So before we go any further, we just want to tell you, if you want to help the show out in any way, shape, or form, you can go to www.patreon.com/Loki and Jabroni, make a one-time donation, a weekly donation, a monthly donation, or you can invest in the show. This way, we can make a better podcast, not only for the Loki and Jabroni Show, but for C&J Speedway Review. Also, go to www.cafepress.com/Loki and Jabroni. Right now, it's only Loki and Jabroni gear, but we are working diligently to make sure that C&J Speedway Review gear is going to get out there for you guys to purchase. Where to the races? Someone wants to ask you, what's a C&J Speedway Review? You'll be able to tell them all about it while sporting your own custom T-shirt.
Definitely.
On top of that, I want to mention that Corey and I, when we did our Daytona preview, totally took a dump in the bed. We peed all over it. We were like 5-year-olds potty training. If you potty train your 5-year-old, I mean, most people do it around 1-2 years old. Who cares? We totally screwed the pooch, but we got a great winner. We had a great battle at the end. We got a lot of controversy. And why don't we start it off, Corey, with a little bit of truck racing action, which, as everybody knows by now, Johnny Sauter took the race. I think that was the one pick that we got right.
Yes, I would say so, and I think I picked him as favorite as well. But the one thing that I learned is that whenever the guys go to Daytona and Talladega in the trucks, there's no doubt, picking the 21 truck, would be the only one to beat. And I think with Johnny Sauter, I mean, you just look at him like he pretty much knows, the draft, and he knows how to get around, the restrictor plate tracks in between. But the one thing I noticed in the truck race on Friday night is it's a lot different than what it is with the Xfinity cars and the Cup cars, because the trucks, they just dance around the racetrack like almost every single lap. And when they come around the corner, they're just dead sideways. They can literally just spin out at almost any lap. But no, I mean, the finish came down between Johnny Sauter and then his teammate Justin Haley for the win. And not only that, I thought the race was great. I really thought it was going to come down between Sauter and David Gilliland. Unfortunately, Gilliland had problems with 8 laps to go, and he spun and hit the wall. Well, not spun, but hit the wall, but that cost him a chance to win. And I think the race on Friday night only saw 21 trucks finish on the lead lap.
And, I didn't get to see the truck race, unfortunately. Work, unfortunately, has to come first. And
right.
when you run a Friday night race, Chris isn't going to be there, unfortunately, because business calls. I did watch the 90-second greatest hits highlights on ESPN. One of the things I was most impressed about, I mean, I know last year we spent a lot of time talking about Ben Rhodes.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time talking about John Hunter, Nemechek, Johnny Sauter. 2 names that popped out watching the greatest hits highlights, you already mentioned, was Justin Haley.
Yeah.
But the other one was Dalton Sargent in that 35 truck. What a great run for him. Where's he from? Do you know anything about this kid?
So Dalton Sargent, I could just pull it up on my computer one sec. So he is from Boca Raton, Florida. He was born in 1998, and he used to drive in the K&N series back in 2015. And actually, it says that he drove 14 races in the E series, had no wins, 6 top 5s, 9 top 10s. On the West side, 2015, he had 1 win, 4 top 5s, and 4 top 10s. But other than that, he was also running in the ARCA series, and he was there about a year ago. He had 3 wins, 10 top 5s, and 18 top 10 finishes. And this year, he is driving in the truck series for GMS Racing. And I can just tell you, their lineup between Sauter, Haley, and Sargent, and also Cody Coughlin, I really think this is going to be a team to watch this season.
Absolutely. When you get a young kid out of nowhere, and I don't want to say out of nowhere because the K&N series is really good for bringing young up-and-coming drivers. And for a 20-year-old, to put him in that truck, I mean, we've seen guys younger than that come up. Logano. Again, I work in Middletown, Connecticut. I work with a lady who's known Joey since he was born.
Yeah.
She and I argue all the time. Joey's a real nice kid. And I'm like, I see what I see on TV. Joey's a smarmy jerk. But, when you have to take their word when they're coming up and how they grow up, et cetera, so forth. But for a guy like Dalton Sargent, who at 20 years old is now 2 steps away from the biggest stage in stock car racing, somebody sees something in this kid. And I really hope it translates into success. Because we need, we're going to talk about it when we get into Daytona 500, we need a youth movement again. For years, up through and including, I would say about 10 years ago, it was always a whole slew of established veterans and maybe 4 or 5 young guns. Now we have this 50-50 split on almost all of the series, where you have the established vets and 50% young guns. I'll still throw Chase Elliott in the young guns, even though this is his 3rd full-time season. I still look at Joey Logano, even though he's been around for 6-8 years?
Yeah.
I still look at Joey Logano as a young gun. As much as I hate to admit that, Kevin Harvick is a grizzled veteran, I'm old. So I look at Kevin Harvick, who took that start in 2001, 17 years running on the Cup circuit. There are times I think to myself, he's a young gun because there are guys who are more tenured. But then I have to remember he's 42 years old. It's not like back in the day where you had 54-year-old Harry Gant winning a race, where you had 49-year-old Dale Earnhardt winning a race. You're getting all the young guns and some vets. But when I look at this truck series and I run down some of these names, there's a lot of new names on the list this year. I'm amazed by the youth movement.
I really am too. And I think, with the youth movement and the truck series, it's going to bring a lot of talent with a lot of these young guys that are coming in. And I think with the truck series, it's already invaded with young guys. And I can pretty much say that, a lot of these young drivers are going to win the truck series this year. And then you look at the Xfinity series, the young guys are already coming up, which of course, you still got the Cup guys that are coming in too. But then you look at the Cup series, that's already starting to invade with young drivers. And there's some of them on the Cup series side that have a lot of talent as well, who I think they can win races this year and could possibly, make the playoffs. And, one of them can win the championship this year.
On any of these levels, that's a true statement.
Yeah.
On any of these levels, truck series, Xfinity series, especially on the Cup side, and I really want to get into, and I don't know if you saw it on Facebook, you had a fantastic party, but I posted something very poignant on my Facebook page. When we get to the Cup side, remind me. I want to throw it out there because I threw it at Loki. I texted him, and I told Loki, Mike Smith from the Loki and Jabroni Show, you should check us out. I said, when Harvick retires, this is my guy. I've made the decision, much like I did with Rusty Wallace. When he was in 2001, I knew he was on the downstretch. I said, Harvick's my guy.
Yeah.
I've already picked the guy out. I'm gonna reveal it here. I thought it was Kyle Larson. It's not going to be Kyle Larson. However, I still like Kyle Larson. That's the missus's favorite driver.
Yeah.
It's also one of my best friend's favorite driver now because Jeff Gordon retired. A lot of young talent, and I want to give, Johnny Sauter's a grizzled veteran, and for him to win this race just kind of cements his worth as a race car driver. Some people look at guys like Sauter, like Nemechek, like Matt Crafton, and they say, well, that's the best they can do.
Right.
If you're good at a particular level and you're having fun, you don't need to move. And I'm not saying that the competition is any better or any worse on any one of these three levels. What I'm saying is if you're good at something, stick to it. Mike Skinner did not translate to the Cup Series back in the day, but he was hellacious in an Xfinity car and he was hellacious in the Truck Series.
Yeah.
Same goes for Ron Hornaday Jr. Great in the Xfinity, great in the truck, not so much on the Cup. But again, you have to remember that the cars are slightly different each time you move. The trucks are certainly different than the stock cars you run on the Xfinity or on the Cup level.
Right.
But if you're killing it in the truck, stay there, make your money, do your thing, be passionate, be happy about what you do. And from all accounts, the Johnny Sauters and the Matt Craftons, they're happy where they are. They're happy with what they do. I could go back to Connecticut's own Randy LaJoy. Randy LaJoy had all the talent in the world and could have moved up and did do a couple races here or there, much like Teddy Christopher, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
But they were happy doing what they were doing, and every now and again when you come around the local area, which around here is Dover, Watkins Glen, New Hampshire, maybe the Pocono race, they'd pop their head in for a cup of coffee and they'd do their thing. Congratulations to Johnny Sauter. Fantastic run. There's nothing more I can say. But what did you take away from the truck race as a telltale sign of how the 2018 season is going to go?
So what I think about Johnny Sauter between this year and last year, so you go back to last year, and if you think about it, this team didn't win until June. So then right when they won the race at Dover back in June, that's when I said, okay, they already won a race, but I really want to see more out of this team. But then once they won at Chicago back in September, right before the playoffs ended up starting, I said, okay, now, 2 wins, great, but, now it's playoff time. They really need to see something, I really need to see what this team can do. So then they ended up winning 2 races in the playoffs. They went at Texas and Phoenix. So I thought, okay, he's got a good shot at winning the championship, but I just don't think he can beat Christopher Bell. And, of course, we saw last year he ended up losing the title by about 1 point. And you go into this year, and I really think the 21 team has a good shot at winning the championship. Now, the only thing is the only driver who I think is going to be the one to beat this year is going to be Noah Gragson. And the reason why I say that is because Gragson is going to be hooking up with crew chief Rudy Fugle. Now, one specific fact about him is he's crew chief a lot of drivers in the Truck Series who have moved up to Xfinity and then the Cup Series side. And, he's won races and championships with both of those drivers. So if you go back to William Byron, he ended up winning 6 races, didn't win the championship that year. The next 2 years, he ends up pairing with Christopher Bell. First year, he ends up winning 1 race, loses the championship. The next year, which was a year ago, they end up winning probably 5-6 races. They won the championship last season. Now he's pairing up with Noah Gragson. And the only thing that I was kind of thinking about is, okay, now he's teaming up with a guy who won a race last year. And I really think that the Gragson-Fugle combo is going to be the one to watch this season. Now, they didn't get off to a good start at Daytona back on Friday, but I really think that this is going to be a team to watch in 2018.
Yeah, kind of a disappointing finish for Noah, 23rd after starting 5th.
Yeah.
I could look down this list. John Hunter Nemechek started 14th, finished 25th. A lot of the top runners who qualified well did not translate into success, whereas you look at Johnny Sauter, started 2nd, finished 1st. Great for him. Grant Effinger started 7th, finished 6th. Spencer Davis started 8th, finished 7th. Aforementioned Dalton Sargent started 4th, finished 8th. There's a lot of upside with Noah Gragson, and I know you talked a lot about him last year. And the few truck races I did get to see, he was lights out. This kid can drive the wheels off of anything.
Oh yeah.
So going
And
forward, this is a kid, and he's with Kyle Busch Motorsports.
Yes.
So you have the equipment, you have the funds, you have the talent. Daytona every year is a crapshoot. The favorites, if they're not up front, they've fallen victim to the crashes, which we saw a lot of this weekend. But again, Daytona doesn't measure how your season's going to go. What Daytona does measure on all three series is are you ready to go?
Right.
A lot of these guys who experienced headache and heartache, I can look at David Gilliland, Clay Greenfield, Noah Gragson. Just on this series alone, all the work they put in during speed weeks, unfortunately, for one reason or another, didn't translate. And this is not indicative of how their season's going to run. What this is it's a building block. Okay, we got through this. We go to Atlanta next week. We do this, and we go to Daytona again later in the season.
Yeah.
We now know what we need to do. And if you're caught up in one of those unfortunate wrecks where, like, say, just off, I'm gonna make this up real quick because I didn't see the truck race. Let's say Ben Rhodes had unfortunately been turned around and started a crash, and you're one of the guys that hit him.
Yeah.
You had nowhere to go. That's not indicative of how your team is going to do. It's indicative of wrong place, wrong time.
Right.
So Daytona is really, it's not only the kickoff of the season, it's a learning tool. I always say the first 3 weeks of the season, you throw it out the window. Whoever gets that win, great, you move on. You're now in the championship run now that we have win and you're in.
Yeah.
Which I have a question about that later on. I want to hear what you think. So you win, you're in. Great. It's not indicative of, Johnny Sauter won this race. He's immediately going to be a championship contender. No, Johnny Sauter is in the hunt. It's up to you, come 30-some races down the road, to make that your motivation, your fuel, your tool. Okay, we've won.
Right.
You can't take a nap. You can't take a nap for the next 4 months. You have to pound it. You have to go out there and you have to earn it. And, for Johnny Sauter, again, grizzled veteran on the circuit, he knows what to do. But what if in the event in the next 3 weeks a Justin Haley wins, or a Spencer Davis wins, or a Dalton Sargent wins, whether they're on limited runs, limited schedules, et cetera, so forth. I know on the two lower series, a lot of these guys are hampered by sharing the ride. And we'll talk about that coming up too, because we spoke on Ryan Preece earlier. It turns out earlier in last week, I believe, sharing a ride. Is he eligible? Are any of these guys sharing a ride eligible on the Xfinity or the Truck Series for a championship?
I mean, I look at it, there's some of these guys that are sharing, not only for like the drivers championship, but you also have like the owners championship as well, because that's pretty much the reason how, you get, Ganassi, their combo is pretty much Kyle Larson and John Hunter Nemechek. And then, of course, the Gibbs team, the 18 car is going to be shared by like multiple Cup drivers, and then Preece, and then whoever else in between. Then you go to Kyle Busch Motorsports, the 51 truck. That's going to be shared by like multiple drivers who are either going to be the boss or Spencer Davis or some of the guys from the Xfinity series and whatnot. But I look at it, I'd say like the only driver who I think, right now is the championship eligible one, but is going to be driving for two different teams. I look at Austin Cindric, and I was actually kind of thinking about this like a few days ago. So I said, okay, so let's say if Cindric wins this weekend at Atlanta, which of course he's driving the 12 car for Penske. I'm thinking to myself, okay, so does he have that playoff bumper sticker, when he drives the Roush 60 car? And I would probably say yes, but the only confusing part is it's going to be hard to follow, like, what car he's going to be driving in like every weekend, because, when I saw the article that he's either going to drive the 60 car for Roush Fenway or the 12 and the 22 for Team Penske, that's the only thing that I said, okay, it's exciting he's ready for the championship, but I just don't know why he's running for two different teams.
Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. But Again, I'm not a NASCAR team. I don't have a NASCAR charter. All I've got is a 40-year love for NASCAR and a bunch of gimmicks behind me. Right here, by the way, in the new Valhalla Underground studio, which is where I'll be doing the C&J Speedway review from now on. If I were to pan the camera, and I don't want to do it because, heaven forbid, I screw something up and get cut off, right over there to my right is where we record the Loki and Jabroni show.
Yep.
Over here, you see all the racing gimmicks. This is where I'm going to record C&J Speedway review. And eventually, sir, I'm going to have you come in. Let me swing this around real quick. I'm going to have you come in. You're going to have a microphone in front of you. Okay. And you're going to do this show from right here. I know it's an hour and change drive, but I'd love to have you sit down here in one of these wonderful cushy chairs and do the show with Ed right here.
Interesting.
You have a good time. Of course, I'll have to sit in Loki's chair. He has a problem with other people than me sitting in his chair.
Right.
All right, so let's go through your top 10 as we do every time. If you've been a fan of our show since last season, your winner is Johnny Sauter. The number 24 of Justin Haley came in second. Joe Nemechek third. Ben Rhodes fourth. Scott Legacy Jr. came in fifth. Grant Effinger sixth. Spencer Davis seventh. Dalton Sargent eighth. Jordan Anderson, 9th, and Justin Fontaine, 10th. Some of your more notables that finished outside the top 10, Matt Crafton in 19th, David Gilliland, 21st, Noah Gregson, we mentioned him before, in 23rd, John Hunter Nemechek, 25th, Brett Moffitt, 26th, Parker Kligerman, 28th, Jennifer Jo Cobb, who I'd really love to see her break through and have a stellar season, in 31st, and Travis Quapple in 32nd. Overall, did you enjoy the truck race?
I did. The trucks racing at Daytona and Talladega, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of exciting. And the way I look at it, like I said, the trucks, they pretty much move around a lot, and they pretty much get loose like almost every single lap. So you're pretty much on the seat of, these guys correct like almost like every single lap in between. And there's actually two notables that I really want to go through in the trucks that I saw on Friday night. So the first one I saw was Matt Crafton. And the reason why he finished 19th was he pretty much had kind of an up and down night. There was one part where he was trying to get on the pit road, and I guess he almost drove by his pit. And the next thing you know, he spun pretty much getting to his pit box because he couldn't really get woe down in time anyway. And then number two was he ended up getting penalized because of the new NASCAR rule of you can't have more than 5 pit crew guys on the pit box. And if you go back to last year when Matt Kenseth, did that pit stop before the red flag, and then that got him disqualified from the next round whatsoever. The new rule is that whenever somebody does that, the driver's going to be docked 2 laps instead of being disqualified whatsoever. So NASCAR pretty much changed that rule during the offseason. And then my second one was got to be John Hunter Nemechek. So reason how he finished 25th. So I was watching the race on Friday, and there was one part, I think this was kind of near the end. He was trying to make a pass on, or I guess he was trying to block the 41 of Ben Rhodes. And I guess what happened was Rhodes tried to go up to the high side, and then Nemechek tried to block. Next thing you know, cuts a right rear tire. So then he drives around maybe for about 3 laps. Next thing you know, the tire explodes. So then once that happens, then everyone started checking up, and then that collected guys like Friesen and Brett Moffitt, and then some of the other guys in between.
Well, it sounds like it was an exciting race. And speaking of exciting, I don't even know what to say. Holy Santa Claus balls. The Power Shares QQQ 300, the Xfinity race, drag race to the end, reminiscent of, and I don't know if you can see it or not. Behind me is a great framed picture. You can't, if I do, which way? This way?
Yeah.
You see that picture right here? Kevin Harvick, Mark Martin at the line in Daytona.
Yep.
Until this Xfinity Series race, I thought was the greatest Daytona finish ever until I saw Tyler Reddick drag race Elliott Sadler to the line to take the Power Shares Triple Q 300. What a phenomenal finish. Give me your thoughts, man. How was the race before the drag race?
I would say like the first few laps, it was, it was smooth at first, and then you had the big wreck that came out on lap 11 when Austin Cindric collected a couple of guys, which included Ryan Reed, Brandon Jones, and then Christopher Bell, and then Reddick had a little bit of damage, but he was able to move on. But I probably say that the racing on Saturday, it looked as if it was exciting, and then of course, the two stages were won basically by Cup drivers, which was no surprise on that one. And then there was one point later on in the race, I guess both the junior motorsports guys, Chase Elliott and Elliott Sadler, were penalized for locking bumpers. And of course, the rule is in the Truck Series and Xfinity, you're not allowed to do that. So that pretty much had them, scramble for position like right near the end. And then I probably say like the first overtime when 19 cars got taken out, and they were like big guys, Austin Dillon, Matt Tift, Logano, Larson, Custer. There were a lot of good guys that got taken out of that wreck. So now I'm looking at it going, okay, so we might either see a first time winner who has been around the sport but has never like won like in his entire career, or we might just see someone like come from the back or wherever it is in between. So then you go through all the overtimes, and there was one overtime where they came off of turn 4. It looked as if they were going to come to the start finish line, but the next thing you know, boom, there was another wreck. And I'd say like they were about maybe 100 yards from the start finish line when that happened. So that NASCAR reviewed the tape. They said, he didn't cross the start finish line, when the whole thing happened. So they had to do it again. And then next thing you know, the last restart, it looked as if Ryan Reed was going to win 3 straight. But then, and then there was a couple blocking that was going on. And then next thing you know, it was a battle between Junior Motorsports, Tyler Reddick and Elliott Sadler at the end. And Reddick pretty much edged out Sadler by like 0.000 of a second, and I thought it was just unbelievable.
It was a mere, not even inches. It was like less than an inch from what I could see on the Greatest Hits replay. I watched the race, but I had to watch it back on ESPN, get the Greatest Hits replay, and what a fantastic the technology. Let's start there. The technology on these cars, to be able to read it. This isn't going to be a 3-day thing that decides Richard Petty wins the race back in 1372.
Right.
This is spot on. They know within seconds. I know they throw up the thing that says unofficial results. They still have to go through tech. They still have to go through inspection.
Yeah.
But to see that drag race and to see Tyler Reddick turn that number 9 around that track and basically give Elliott Sadler probably the fight of his life. I don't think Elliott Sadler has been in a finish that close ever in his career, and he's been around forever.
Yeah.
For this kid to come up and have the run of his life, I know on the Loki and Jabroni show I've said it before because those guys, Eddie, our producer, Mike's a fringe race fan. He was a big Rusty Wallace fan back in the day. Every race has a winner. Daytona has a champion. And Tyler Reddick, no matter what he does for the rest of his career, I hope he doesn't become a Derek Cope. I hope he doesn't become a Trevor Bayne. No offense to those guys. Great racers. You can't get to the top level if you're not. But you can always say, I'm a Daytona champion.
Yeah.
So I'll break down the top 10 real quick. And again, I only saw the last couple laps of this race. I'm going to ask you, like we always do, for your biggest surprise and the biggest failure.
Yep.
Tyler Reddick drove the number 9 all the way to victory lane. Elliott Sadler second. Ryan Reed third.
And I think we just lost them. All right. So we go to the top 10 right now. So due to technical difficulties on Chris's side, we will get to the top 10 in the Xfinity Series results. So we have Tyler Reddick, who came in first, Elliott Sadler second, Ryan Reed third, Kaz Gralla fourth, Garrett Smithley rounds out the top 5. And let's see. Then there's Spencer Gallagher 6th, Ryan Truex 7th, Daniel Suarez 8th, Ross Chastain 9th, and Brandon Jones rounds out the top 10 in his Joe Gibbs Racing debut.
What a fantastic job you do with. We had great internet last night. Unfortunately, not so great tonight. But
Right.
when I left off, I was about to say Kaz Gralla was a guy we talked about last year, being a Massachusetts native and a guy. We need more guys like Joey Logano from this area that go and make big things happen. Yes, we've had Teddy Christopher, God rest his soul. Yes, we've had Richie Evans, God rest his soul. We don't really get a lot of guys from the New England area that go and make a big difference. I'm hoping, sometimes against hope, that Kaz Gralla is that guy that takes the New England area and really puts it on the map. Joey Logano's doing it now. Maybe Kaz Gralla can do it to the next level.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So your biggest surprise and your biggest failure in the Power Shares Triple Q 300.
So my big surprise this weekend, I would say it would definitely have to be Kaz Gralla in his JGL Racing debut. Like I said, I was happy that he came in 4th. You know, he was successful on the super speedways last year, not to mention he won the truck race at Daytona a year ago. And then my big disappointment, you know, there are some guys on the bottom that ran pretty good and that got taken out in that big crash, like at the start of the first overtime whatsoever. But I would say the big disappointment in my book would have to be Christopher Bell. Really thought that he was going to contend with the other guys like near the end, but I really think that this is going to be a team that I think is going to be a one to watch this season, especially when it comes to the mile and a half. Because if you looked at last year at Kansas, you know, of course, won there a year ago, but I really think that, you know, Bell can be pretty good on the mile and a halves within the next few weeks, you know, on the Xfinity schedule.
Absolutely. And you want to talk about heartache, tragedy, and disappointment, as well as history. We'll move on to the granddaddy of them all, the Daytona 500, 20 years to the day after Dale Earnhardt Sr. drove the number 3 to victory lane in his first and only Daytona 500 win. Austin Dillon steers that car into victory lane this year. Congratulations to Austin Dillon. Yes, I've said some not so nice things about Austin being, you know, the owner's grandson. Yes, I've said some things about Austin Dillon with a little nepotism, but the boy can turn a wheel and he's got the talent. He's got what it takes. And when you win the biggest race of them all, after you've won a race or two here or there, he's got what it takes. I'm totally changing my mind about Austin Dillon right here and right now. Oh, that's all I get is a thumbs up. That you're killing me right now.
Yeah, I mean, I look at I look at Austin Dillon. I mean, think about it. You know, he won last year the Coca-Cola 600, and I look at him this year, and even though he won the Daytona 500, I asked myself, okay, is this going to be the year where RCR is going to be back on that winning streak like what they did the last couple of years? I don't know. I mean, I still want to watch them and see like how they do this season. I mean, let's be honest. They won 2 races last year with Ryan Newman and Austin Dillon, but I really want to see more out of this race team coming up this season. But you go back to the last lap and the part where Eric Almirola was blocking right at the end, you know, I everybody pretty much said like, Austin Dillon wasn't going to lift the throttle. He wasn't going to lift I mean, when it comes to the last lap of the Daytona 500, you have to go for it. And, and of course, Almirola said in his interview, like, I did block him, but, but even he wasn't like disappointed about it either. Like, I mean, I still say like, coming home 11th wasn't really that bad, but guys, when it's like the biggest race of the year, especially the 500, you got to do what you have to do. And I guess that's what Austin Dillon did on Sunday.
Oh, sure. And in his interview, I said it last night on the Loki and Jabroni show, which I've already told you where to find it. I'm not going to go through it again. Right. I talked about the finish, and Eric Almirola really impressed me with his interview. He's like, you know what? I was blocking. I knew I didn't have the juice. I thought maybe I could do a draft with Austin. Austin had more juice. There's nothing you can do about it. And Mike brought up a very fantastic point in regard to the number 3 of Austin Dillon, is that Dale Earnhardt Sr. in that number 3 made a career out of when he was the strongest car and you were ahead of him and the laps are winding down, he would move you out of the way. Whether it was a bump and run, or he would get you a little squirrely and go by you, or basically, in many cases, he would just turn you. I don't think what Austin Dillon did was intentional, and you put up a great thing on the C&J Speedway review page. Was it dirty or was it hard racing? I say it's hard racing. I think that, Almirola, I have the lead. I have to do everything I can to protect it. Dillon is thinking, I have a better car than he has. I'm going to try to get around him. I don't think the wreck was intentional. Absolutely not.
No.
What I do think is that Almirola showed great class, great poise, and great pride in that interview. And even Dillon in the post-race interview said, we were running hard, and I'm sorry. I turned him, but it's the Daytona 500.
Right.
Best answer he could have ever given.
I would say so too, yeah.
Yeah, amazing grace shown by Austin Dillon. One of the things I noticed, and I wanted to talk to you about it, and I think we touched on it when you were doing your live feeds, was that it seemed like with 2 to 3 laps to go in each of the 3 stages, there was a wreck.
Yeah.
We talked a lot last year about stage racing and how it's not okay anymore to hang back and just ride around. If you've got great equipment and you can blow the field away, it's not okay anymore to hang back and just wait. You have to score those stage points. Martin Truex made it so difficult last year for people. Again, it was his trophy to lose, and he didn't lose it. He made his reputation not only in winning races, but in winning stages.
Yeah.
I think what we saw this year in Daytona in 2018 is that I think a lot of guys jumped the gun and a lot of guys got nervous to the point where whether you were a grizzled veteran, and we saw a couple of those start a couple wrecks, or you were a rookie, or you were Danica Patrick, that once those stages started to come to a close, maybe you made a move that wasn't the best decision you could have ever made.
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at the second stage where, Chase Elliott was getting a run down the backstretch, I mean, he was pushing Blaney like right near the end. And then, of course, Keselowski pretty much tapped his rear bumper. Then the next thing you know, the 9 car got loose. And then once he went up the racetrack, hit the turn 3 wall, then everyone started checking up. And from there on, once you're in that wreck, you either have to steer out of it or, there's just nowhere to go. And then you look at the first stage, the part where Stenhouse almost spun out, literally saved it. And then, of course, once that happened, then somebody tapped somebody, and I think it was the 19 of Suarez. And then from there, then that's when everyone started checking up on that point too. But you look at stage racing between last year and this year, I would say that, last year it was pretty much a learning curve for everyone. But I would say the only driver that knew it pretty well and that pretty much figured this whole thing out was Martin Truex Jr. But now you go to 2018, and I would say that a lot of these drivers know the stage racing. They know where to get the points. They know how to get the stage points and whatever. So I think it's going to be very interesting with this stage racing, especially when it comes to the super speedways, because that's where, you could be almost anywhere, in the top 10 or outside the top 10 and so forth, comparing to all the other tracks in between.
Oh, yeah, because I was explaining to my stepdaughter who watched a little bit of the race with me. And, of course, I always want to know where Kevin Harvick is. The missus wants to know where Larson is. And my daughter, who wasn't here with us, wants to know where Truex is.
Yeah.
So she looks at the crawler and she says, Harvick's 18th? Oh, that's disappointing. And I'm like, sweetie, look at the screen. He's 0.8 of a second back.
Yeah.
What that means is that he could move out of the draft if he has a partner and be in the front in the snap of a finger. And before you know it, the entire complexion of the race changes.
Yeah.
So like you said, super speedway racing is a different animal than being 18th next week in Atlanta, where you can't make that move quite as bold
No.
and shoot up to the front. Going back to that 2007 Daytona 500 that Harvick won, he restarted in ninth, and he won the race in 2 laps. He had a great drafting partner in Matt Kenseth. You can move if you have a great drafting partner. At 200 miles an hour, if you move out of that draft and no one goes with you, we've seen it a million times. That train passes you right by.
And it goes really quick.
So, oh, yes, it does, especially when you have 6 to 8 cars that are equally yoked and are running as well as you are. And if you're in the lead of it, you're blowing everybody away.
Right.
2007, Harvick got lucky. I say that with all due respect because he won that race fair and square, but he got lucky that Kenseth went out with him. Him and Kenseth were the class of that field that day. In this race, I got to say, a lot of the big names, the big guns, we'll talk about it in just a minute, crashed out, had a bad day. But when I look at the top 10, Austin Dillon, Denny Hamlin, I'm not reading them in order, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, the Penske cars. Let's just take Hamlin out of that mix. The Penske cars truly owned that field Sunday. There was nothing stopping them.
Right.
And unfortunately, at the end of the race, you have Logano in 4th, you have Blaney in 7th.
Yep.
And somewhere, because of a crash, you have Keselowski in 32nd. Not a bad day for Penske Racing, but at the end of the day, you want to hoist that Harvey Earl trophy above your head, and that's what Austin Dillon did. I'm going to run down the top 10 real quick and the notables. Austin Dillon obviously comes in first. Congratulations. Darrell Wallace Jr., my man Bubba, comes in second. I really wanted him to win. He just didn't have the juice at the end. Denny Hamlin 3rd, Joey Logano 4th, Chris Buescher 5th, Paul Menard 6th, Ryan Blaney 7th, Ryan Newman 8th, Michael McDowell a surprising 9th, and A.J. Allmendinger rounds out the top 10. The notables, Eric Almirola, who we just spoke of, that last lap, hullabaloo, finishes in 11th, and like you said, not a bad place to finish. Former champion Trevor Bayne finishes 13th. Jamie Murray battled problems all day. He came in 16th. Martin Truex Jr., 18th. Kyle Larson, 19th. Going further down the list, Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, 25th and 26th, respectively. Stenhouse Jr., 29th. Harvick, 31st. Keselowski, 32nd. Chase Elliott, 33rd. Casey Kane, 34th. Eric Jones, 36th. Jimmy Johnson, 38th. A lot of big names at the bottom of this list.
Yeah.
And that comes back to, at the end of the stages, I think many of these drivers got a little anxious, got a little flutter in their step, and made moves that weren't in their best interest.
Yeah, I would say so too. And there was some blocking that was going on in the race on Sunday, and I was actually listening to this on the XM radio. I think it was a few days ago, and they said, okay, so let's say like if NASCAR has its own like blocking rule, which of course IndyCar has it a lot different than there was. So let's say if Eric Almirola was blocking at the end, and NASCAR penalized them, and they said, oh, we're sorry. The reason why you didn't win the race is because we penalized you because you pretty much went 8 inches to the left, and we don't do that here. So I would say that, if they had a blocking rule, that would cost pretty much the leader a chance to win, when it comes to the super speedways and whatnot. And then, of course, you have the bump drafting rule, which I remember back in like 2006, and I think you could probably remember this too. There was one time where Tony Stewart, I think, said after like the Budweiser shootout that year, he said, oh, everybody's going to die at Daytona and Talladega, if we keep doing this whatsoever. So then a few days before the 500, NASCAR said, okay, guys, we're going to be keeping a close eye on you if you do aggressive driving. And, if we catch you, you're going to be penalized. And then, of course, 2006 Daytona 500, what does Tony Stewart do? He ends up moving Matt Kenseth out of the way, slides him all the way to the grass. Next thing you know, slits up the racetrack. and doesn't really hit anything or whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, when it comes to super speedway racing, I mean, yeah, you have to be there at the end. You got to draft who you have to draft with, and of course, you got to block, whoever's coming, on either the high side or the low side whatsoever. Because when it comes to super speedway racing, I mean, it's pretty much a chess match at 200 plus miles an hour, and if you're lucky enough to hold off that 43 car field or whoever gets out of the big wreck, you're pretty lucky.
When Stewart said that back in the day, and I do remember that very vividly.
Yeah.
It was almost as if, I hate to say it like this, he knew he wanted to get out of that car.
Yeah.
Even back in 2006, he knew he wanted to get out of that car. He had bigger plans, bigger dreams, and now he's realized them. Props to him. But bump drafting, you can go back 15, 18 years where it's part of the sport. If you're on a track like a Talladega, like a Daytona, it's part of what you do. You assume the risk when you get into that car, which is why, I get bent out of shape when I got bent out of shape. Let me put it this way. When people were blaming Sterling Marlin and Ken Schrader for the death of Dale Earnhardt. No, stop. He understood the risk every time he got into that car.
Yeah.
Every driver that straps in knows what the risk is. It's checkers or wreckers. That's the way it goes. And you put your life on the line. It's a lot like an MMA fighter. It's a lot like a professional wrestler. It's a lot like a boxer. At any moment in the snap of a finger, everything's done. Dale Earnhardt knew that. Tony Stewart knew that. In fact, I could go back to 2001 after the death of Dale Earnhardt, and Tony Stewart was one of the last guys to install the head and neck restraint, the Hans device. Yeah. There was a different device that was offered back then, but now it's strictly the Hans device. He was one of the last guys to put it on.
Yep.
He just said, no, I'm not doing this. I understand the risk that I get into. But then fast forward 5-6 years later, this bump drafting, somebody's going to get killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. It's unfortunate. Nobody wants to see anybody die. I was nobody's Dale Earnhardt fan. I certainly had my fair share of things to say about him when he was alive. Right. But he was also one of the most fantastic electric champions this sport has ever seen, and he deserves all the credit in the world. And every, that year I went to 2 races in 2001 where on the third lap, everybody went silent. You throw 3 fingers in the air. I was in tears. And my buddy was like, dude, are you okay? I'm like, dude, I've never been better. I'm just showing my respect. I had a Dale Earnhardt sticker after his death on my car. You understand the risk. If you get into something like auto racing, like being an airline pilot, cripes, even being a cop, you understand the risk that goes with the job.
Yeah.
And no offense to any of our younger listeners, but if you're going to be a snowflake about it and say, oh, well, that guy nudged me. Let's go back to one of your favorite movies and mine as well, Days of Thunder. That boy didn't hit you. That boy didn't bump you. That boy didn't nudge you. He rubbed you. And rubbing
son is racing.
You got it. Harry Hogg.
My all-time
played by Robert Duvall.
Yes.
Really? I'm going to have to introduce you to some good movies. We'll have to get Days of Thunder lower on your list.
My all-time favorite. I mean, honestly, I could just watch it over and over again and still say it's one of my favorites.
The night before Daytona, I did my Daytona prep. I watched Talladega Nights and Days of Thunder back to back. Had to do it. So we've gone through. Thank you. We've gone through the top 10.
Yep.
Now, because I know we're getting to be about 20 minutes from the end. Your biggest surprise and your biggest failure as far as the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Daytona 500 this past Sunday.
So my biggest surprise would definitely have to be Bubba Wallace. I do expect a lot of big things out of him this year. And even Dale Jr. said on his podcast show, I think a few days ago, he said, Bubba pretty much drove like a veteran. And he also said that, he could pretty much change the sport, now that we have an African-American driver in the Cup Series. I mean, I like that. I really want to see a lot more ethnicity into the sport, whether if it's either, African-American or whether if it's like female, like Danica Patrick, or anything else in between. I really think Bubba can do some really big things. And also, a side story from the whole Bubba thing. So when he finished second, and you'll get a kick out of this too. So he actually made a special stop, like when he was coming on his way home from Daytona. Guess where he ended up stopping at?
Where's that?
He ended up stopping at which was then the old buildings of Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, and he did the three fingers, which I thought that was perfect.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I thought that was
wow.
I thought that was a great tribute. Bubba did a really good job doing that. And then, of course, my disappointment would have to be Ryan Blaney. Of course, leading 118 laps in the 500. I thought he had the best car, to win. I really thought from the start of the race to the checkered flag, I really thought that 12 car was going to win. Got caught up in that big wreck, like right near the end where, he tapped Kurt Busch, and then next thing you know, everyone else started crashing whatsoever. But keep an eye on that 12 car this year. I mean, even though that we're going to Atlanta this weekend, I still say that, Blaney is going to be one to watch no matter what track we go to, either if it's on the mile and a half, the short tracks, or whatever. I really think that, this is going to be Blaney's breakout year, and I really think that this kid's going to win a lot of races in 2018.
Fair enough, and I might throw a flag on Ryan Blaney as being the disappointment. It's not, in my eyes, and maybe it's just my eyes, it's not a disappointment to come in 7th at the Daytona 500. But I understand your reasoning.
Yeah.
My biggest surprise, much like yours, Bubba Wallace. You can't take it away from him. Rookie driver, finishes second, had a hell of a run the entire day. My disappointment is going to surprise some people for the amount of bad luck he had in this race. Yes, I'm going to say something nice about him. To see Kyle Busch come in 25th, as much as I reveled in the bad luck because I am no Kyle Busch fan,
right?
It was difficult to watch every time something happened to him that was bad, because he is a guy, no matter what I think of him as a person or as a driver, he's got all the talent in the world. And this race was just such a disappointment. If I had to have an honorable mention for disappointment, I had high hopes for William Byron coming into this weekend. Unfortunately, it didn't translate. A 23rd place finish. He had a wreck. He limped through the entire race. Just a terrible run for the 2014, but they will bounce back. And now, as we go forward, let's talk about Atlanta Motor Speedway. As we go forward, we're going to start with the Truck Series, the Active Pest Control 200, benefiting Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, the second longest name after last year that we talked about, which was the Ninja Turtles gimmick schneebitzfernum.com 400. I don't remember what you remember what it was. I don't.
Yeah, I think it was the Ninja Turtles 400. The way I looked at it.
Okay, it was the longest name in the world.
Yeah.
Looking, there's a couple of TBAs in here. Kyle Busch is going to be running the number 4 truck.
Yep.
A lot of the usual suspects. I'm running down the list right now. Not a lot of surprises. Give me your Stone Cold lock and your sleeper.
So my lock this weekend definitely has to be Kyle Busch. No matter if he gets into a truck or an Xfinity car, I really think that this is going to be the only driver to beat, on Saturday. And then, of course, my sleeper, I'm going to be taking a look at Johnny Sauter. And you looked at him last year. I mean, he was the only guy that ran pretty good on the mile and a half last year. And then, of course, he won at Texas and Chicago. I really think, the 21 team, and it wouldn't really surprise me, if they can make it back-to-back wins. But I think he's going to be one to watch for come Saturday.
Okay. Well, on that Truck Series, my Stone Cold lock is the same as yours. It's Kyle Busch. You put Kyle Busch behind the wheel of anything, and he's going to run roughshod. And more than likely, he's going to take the checkered flag, especially on the Xfinity and the Truck Series. That's not taking away from his success in the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series.
Right.
It just shows that when he gets himself behind the wheel of an Xfinity or a Truck Series, he's taking you to school. All you have to do is take notes and do what he does going forward. My sleeper pick, based on the strength of his run last week, is going to be the 24 of Justin Haley. I really think that this could be a breakout for young Justin, and he could show us something that maybe we didn't see before.
Right.
Okay, so now moving on to the Renai 250, a great plumbing parts place that if you had never shopped there, go do it. A lot of the usual suspects, but I'm going to throw a couple names at you that are going to run this race as I'm running down the list. Joey Logano is going to be in the race. Kevin Harvick is running the 98 car in this race. John Hunter Nemechek is moving up and running the 42 that Kyle Larson ran last week in the Xfinity Series. Morgan Shepherd's making one of his fantastic appearances at 109 years old, running the number 89 car. A couple of TBAs, we'll find out as we go along. Give me your sleeper. Give me your lock.
So my lock this weekend, I'm going to pick Christopher Bell on this one because now you think about Atlanta, and it hasn't been repaved since, like, I don't know, the last 20 years or so. You look at that track, it's old, it's bumpy, it's got a lot of rough spots in between. The reason why I'm picking Christopher Bell as my lock, think about it. He's a dirt racer, and we all know how the dirt racers do. When you're driving a dirt car like dead sideways, he's pretty much a wheelman, when it comes to that. And I really think between Bell and this racetrack, he's pretty much known for driving a loose race car. I really think this 20 team, could be a one to watch come Saturday. And then my sleeper pick, I'm going to have to go with John Hunter Nemechek on this one. He's making his Xfinity debut on Saturday, and I expect a lot of big things out of him. Now, I know he's not going to be running for the championship in both series right now, but it should be pretty interesting to see how he's going to run for Ganassi. And if you looked at between this year and a year ago, go back to last year when Tyler Reddick ended up running a few races for Ganassi. As a result, boom, he ends up winning at Kentucky last September, and then a couple months after that, goes full-time racing for Junior Motorsports. So now my big question is, so let's say if John Hunter Nemechek does pretty well in his races, gets a win in one of them, do you expect him to go full-time Xfinity racing in 2019?
It would certainly be nice to see. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm going to go a different direction. I know a lot of you folks might think that I'm going to pick Kevin Harvick based on his, success in Atlanta in a Cup car and in an Xfinity car, being a two-time champion on that level, but I'm not. I'm going with the 22 of Joey Logano. Joey Logano last year, disappointing season. This year, he's gonna use. I'm gonna say he's getting smarter.
Yeah.
His attitude, same. His smarmy, same. But I think he's going to use this season to take every bit of data and every bit of information, every bit of practice that he can to use that to propel his Cup career. So I think I see the 22 in victory lane come Saturday. My sleeper is going to be the double zero of Cole Custer. The kid's got tremendous upside. There's nowhere to go for him except up right now. So it would be nice to see the double zero in victory lane. He's got the talent. He's got the skill. It's time for him to show it. That's my pick. And it seems you got nothing, so that's all good.
Yeah. So, well, actually, yeah. I mean, I know the screen gets a little bit in and out sometimes, and the audio is going in and out a little bit. But speaking of Cole Custer, and before we go on to the next subject or whatsoever, so I'm actually reading an article right now, and it says that Cole Custer is going to be making his Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series debut next week at Las Vegas, driving for Rick Ware Racing, driving the 51 car.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Good on him.
So this just goes to show you that.
Or my lock.
So this just goes to show you that, no matter how many races that Custer is going to be running this year in the Cup Series, it's going to be kind of 50-50, depending on if he's going to go full-time Cup racing in 2019 and what team he's going to be driving for. And then, of course, like we mentioned, with the whole Kurt Busch 1-year deal, let's say, if Kurt Busch doesn't, do great this season, chances are, you might put Custer in that seat.
Custer could be in that 41, and
Yep.
For whatever it's worth, I would love to see Custer in that 41. Now, the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Sunday, February 25th, 2 o'clock. All your usual suspects. Couple of surprises as I'm going down the list. Jeffrey Earnhardt in the 00, which I think is a different car than he ran this past weekend. Ross Chastain in the 15 is going to be in the race. Going down the list, usual Harrison Rhodes in the 51. And then everybody else is your usual suspects. Who's your lock? Who's your sleeper?
My lock for this weekend is definitely going to be Kyle Larson. If you go back to last season, not only he finished second in this race, but he also finished second probably 3 straight times before he ended up winning in California a couple weeks later. But, like I said, with Christopher Bell earlier, Kyle Larson's another guy that runs really well in the dirt races, and not to mention he's run the Knoxville Nationals a couple times. But I really think that, Larson, could get a win out of the bag, early in the season. And then, of course, my sleeper pick, it was kind of a little bit tough to choose, but I'm going to have to go with the 4. Because if I look at last year, he could have won last season had the pit road speeding penalty not happened. I really think the 4, Kevin Harvick, could be the one to watch on Sunday.
Well, this is the first time where I'm not going to pick Kevin Harvick for anything. Not the first time, but when it comes to Atlanta, Harvick has had some great success. If I have to take a lock on this race, and obviously I do because that's the rules of what we do, I'm taking the 1.5-mile king. I'm taking the 78 of Martin Truex Jr.
Okay.
It's tough to bet against him. It really is. He mastered the 1.5 miles last year between him and Kyle Larson. They basically, if you go back, there's 1 or 2, like the Kevin Harvicks, the Kyle Busches, whatever, who picked up wins at the 1.5 miles. But if your name isn't Truex or Larson, you weren't doing anything. You were just following the leader. So that's why I'm taking Truex. As my sleeper, I'm just going to go a little bit further up the number list. Actually, I'm going to subtract numbers. Let me take that back. I'm hoping that the momentum of last week could propel Bubba Wallace into victory lane. He learned a lot last weekend. If you watched any of the press footage over the last few days of Bubba Wallace, what a smart, well-spoken, intelligent young man. And he knows what it takes. And I'm telling you guys this right now, breaking news. When Kevin Harvick retires, I am full-on 43 gear. I am Bubba Wallace as long as the day is. That's my guy. When Harvick decides to step down, I'm Bubba Wallace. It's all over. If I could take a second sleeper, and because I make the rules, I can do what I want. The 9 of Chase Elliott needs to get to victory lane. I'm tired of talking about Chase Elliott being a bridesmaid and not a bride. Basically, Chase Elliott, we talked about it last week. I gave him 10 races. 10 races starting at Daytona. You need to get to victory lane. So I'm taking 2 sleepers. I'm taking Bubba Wallace and I'm taking Chase Elliott. And I will take Chase Elliott as my sleeper every week for 10 weeks. And if he can prove me wrong, fantastic. If Chase Elliott can't get to victory lane, he's got a little bit of a problem going forward. Because it's okay. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that was not a race winner at some point in their career and they move on and people remember them. I look at Mark Martin, Harry Gant, guys that never won a championship. And then I look at guys like Earnhardt, Wallace, Terry Labonte, Bobby Labonte, Dale Jarrett, guys that the success and the talent translated. Chase Elliott has to break out. And if he doesn't break out this season, he's just going to be another guy like Kyle Petty, who did win a couple races, who is just cruising off dad's name. And I hate to say that because I think Chase Elliott's a great young man. I look at him as the future as much as I look at guys like William Byron and Bubba Wallace and all that mess. Chase Elliott is the standard bearer for this rookie crop. And by rookie, I mean 5 years or less on the Cup Series. You're not until you win a race, you're a rookie. It's the be all end all. Trevor Bayne took 2 years, then he finally won a race. I really want success for this kid, and he's got big shoes to fill. Kyle, if one of Rusty Wallace's kids were on the Cup Series, Dale Earnhardt Jr. had the biggest shoes to fill other than Kyle Petty, but it translated.
Right.
He won a butt ton of races, never won an overall points championship, but Dale Earnhardt Jr. parlayed his talent and made a successful career. I want that for Chase Elliott. So, Bubba Wallace, Chase Elliott, my sleepers.
I'm hoping Chase Elliott wins a race this year. I don't know where, but you look at some of the races last year, and I probably say that 2 of the races, I think he could have won was pretty much Michigan. He ran pretty much successful there last year, and then some of the tracks where he was leading, and then something would happen right at the end. But I think this is going to be the year where Chase could have a breakout year, but I'm going to probably be the same thing on you. I'm going to give him 10 races as well, see where he's at. And I'm going to say, and I think you might have said this too, I'm going to say, if he doesn't win a race, by the All-Star, weekend or after, All-Star weekend, then, he's going to have to, do something. Or Hendrick's going to have to do something.
Well, I'm looking at the Geico 500, April 29th is 10 races.
Okay.
And then you have Dover, Kansas, and then you have the All-Star race.
Yep.
And then you have the Monster Energy Open. That's new.
Yep.
Okay, so let's give him till Charlotte. Let's give him till the All-Star race / the Coke 600. If by May 27th he does not have a victory, I'm not saying Hendrick has to do something and change their driver and give Chase the boot. I'm saying Chase has to rethink, what have I done? What am I doing wrong? How do I advance? Because being good enough is never good enough. That's no offense to you, because I know you're a younger guy than I am. It's a very millennial way of thinking.
Yeah.
Good enough is good enough. No, when you're at the top level of motorsports, good enough just doesn't translate. You have to be hungry. You have to want to get up there. I saw that out of Bubba Wallace this weekend. I saw that out of Austin Dillon this weekend. Yep. I saw that out of Ryan Blaney this weekend. Who did I not see it out of? Unfortunately, because he fluctuated so much, I didn't see it out of Chase Elliott. But, again, season opener. Go ahead.
I mean, I only saw him once before he got taken out of the big crash, and then that was it for him.
He ran well, but did he make an impact? When you think of the Daytona 500 in 2018, do you think of Chase Elliott? Because I can think of Bubba Wallace. I can think of Ryan Blaney. I can think of Ryan Newman, who made a charge and did what he needed to do.
Yeah.
What I can't do is say Chase Elliott made an impact in that race. Sorry, not sorry. I can put Denny Hamlin on that list, made an impact in that race.
Yeah.
No Chase Elliott. So we're giving him till the Coke 600. Get yourself into victory lane, Chase. Sorry, not sorry. Figure out what you need to do.
That's right.
Don't know what to say other than that. All right, Corey, you got anything you want to plug?
All right, so before we close out the show and before I do all my my little mishaps and whatnot, so we actually have penalty news for the first time in 2018. Ooh. So this comes out of the Camping World Truck Series, and NASCAR penalized the 41 Ben Rhodes for a post-race height measurement being outside allowed tolerance following the race Friday night at Daytona. So crew chief Eddie Draconis was fined $5,000 and has been suspended for this weekend. The team was also assessed a 10 driver points and owner's points as well. And of course, Ben finished fourth in the race at Daytona on Friday night. And it's actually kind of funny. You don't see the word encumbered in there, so that's pretty much good to show. So anyways, going back, make sure to go back. Anyways, go to NASCARindy.org. I already posted up the blogs for this past weekend's races at Daytona for the trucks, Xfinity, and the Cup Series. Make sure you read them. They're pretty good stuff. Also, go to Facebook, NASCAR IndyCar Central. Also, we are on Twitter at NASCAR Indy, Instagram at NASCAR IndyCar. And also, don't forget to follow us every Wednesday night on the C&J Speedway Review. And not to mention, C&J Speedway Review is also on Instagram, Twitter, and also on Facebook if you want to follow us for more.
Fantastic. But the only thing I want to plug, there's two things, is that if you are in the southeastern Connecticut or basically the New England area, let's talk about April 8th. Let me make sure that's the right date before I go any further. April 8th, 2018, Wethersfield, Connecticut, Hooters. Come down. Loki and Jabroni Show is going to be there for the WrestleMania party. We're not sure who the special guest is yet, but we're going to be there, and we're going to have the same great time we have every time. Great wings, great beer, great eye candy. So come on down and join us. Also, April 3rd is the 3-year anniversary of the Loki and Jabroni Show. We have coming in from the top-rated 2017 podcast, Crime in Sports. Jimmy Wisman is coming in, and he's going to be on the phone talking all things crime and sports, his other podcast, Small Town Murder, and he's a stand-up comedian. So we're going to laugh our butts off sitting right down here in Valhalla Underground. We're going to have a great time. Those are the things I want to plug. Corey, fantastic opening week. I'm looking forward to next week in Atlanta, one of my favorite races of all time, whether it's the early race or the late race. Atlanta is fast. Another 200-mile-an-hour speed fest. I'm going to love it. I'm sure you're going to love it. And there might be a live feed from the party that I'm going to because, heck, you know me. I love my live feeds.
Yeah.
All right, so for Corey Huffnagel, I'm Chris Burns. We'll see you next week on the C&J Speedway Review. Guys, keep it fast, keep it hard, keep it hungry.
Good night.